You let me in, yeah.
Hey guys, what's going on, dudes? It is David here, and we are back with another video. Now, in this video, guys, welcome to the first ever official Falcons podcast that I will be doing every single Wednesday, talking about everything that's going on with the Atlanta Falcons when it comes to the season, when it comes to the coaches, who's going to be fired, who's going to be traded. I will be talking about that every single Wednesday. So, in today's podcast, this is basically just going to be like an introduction to the podcast and then talking about a little thing. Tomorrow, I will have another video talking about the Atlanta Falcons because tomorrow is going to be the NFL schedule release for the Falcons. And I can't wait. I can't really wait to see who when their schedule is going to be, like who they're going to play certain weeks. I can't wait to see that. But today's podcast, which is probably going to be about, say, around 10-11 minutes, so technically it's like a video, but I promised you next week the podcast will be a lot longer. This is just an introduction to the thing, and yeah. So today's video we're going to be talking about Dan Quinn, or today's podcast we're going to be talking about Dan Quinn. And I know a lot of people have said in my comments that if Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff have gotten fired, then it's on the Falcons. That is definitely not true. And Dan Quinn has had the best Falcons team, since 2012. Since 2012. Since that 2012 team, there hasn't been another good Falcons team until 2016. And that was with Dan Quinn. That was Dan Quinn's second year as the Atlanta Falcons coach. Dan Quinn, in 2015, he went 8-8. That's how you know. Hold on. Yeah. Because 2015 he went 8-8. 2016 we made it to the Super Bowl. 2017 we finished 9-5, and then the last 2 years 7-9. So it's been really not good. Such a good season for Dan Quinn. But I'm gonna basically go over why I think Dan Quinn's history and why I think he's not going to be the Falcons head coach. Now, I know I've talked about this before in the previous videos, talking about Arthur Blank possibly going and looking for a whole bunch of new coaches and GMs, because Thomas Dimitroff, who's been the GM of the Atlanta Falcons since 2008, is on the hot seat too, because Arthur Blank really hasn't been liking the way he's been moving his team. I understand extending Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, but they gave him a lot of money. But if we were to trade Matt Ryan or Julio Jones, their cap hit would be it would be devastating for the Falcons. That's how much their cap hit is. But when it comes to Dan Quinn, I think Dan Quinn is going to be on this Falcons team as long as if the Falcons do good this season. Say if the Falcons made the playoffs, then Dan Quinn will probably stay another season. But if we have another season like we did this past season, Dan Quinn will probably be gone, because we can't take another 7-9 season. That means Dan Quinn in his sixth season as the Atlanta Falcons coach will be 4-2? Wait, 2-4. He'll have 2 winning seasons, 4 kind of losing seasons as the Atlanta Falcons head coach. And the reason why I think Arthur Blank is actually looking for a new head coach is because look at everything he's allowed the Falcons to do this past free agency. Or any move that the Atlanta Falcons do goes through Arthur Blank. Arthur Blank, even though he's the head coach, the one that owns the team is the one that has the final say. So Arthur Blank, on every move that Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn have done in free agency and the draft, Arthur Blank has improved. Why do you think Arthur? All right, I just want to get into this real quick. Look at last year's draft. Last year's draft, they did not show Arthur Blank in that whole Falcons room. I mean, he obviously was there because they were in a war room, but Arthur Blank wasn't really probably as much in depth in this year's draft than he was last year's draft than he was in this year's draft. So that can only mean one thing: he does not trust them, and I do believe it. Arthur Blank does not trust Dan Quinn or Thomas Dimitroff, because he's been seeing the Falcons since he bought the team in around 2013, 2012, around that time, or before then. and he's never won a Super Bowl. He's been to the Super Bowl once as an owner, and in that Super Bowl, we had a 28-3 lead. Dan Quinn is hella responsible for this because Dan Quinn is a defensive guy. So that Dan Quinn should have that defense playing better. I don't even care if they're young. They should have that defense playing better. Look at the San Francisco 49ers this year. San Francisco had one of the best defenses. Some of them were young, some of them were experienced, but they were still good. That's basically the same thing the Atlanta Falcons were in 2016. They were young, some of them were young, some of them were experienced, and they did the same thing that the Atlanta Falcons do. They blew the lead. Now, they didn't blow his lead as bad as us because we had a 28-3 lead in the third quarter, and we lost the game in overtime. I still look back at that, and yes, you can put the blame on Kyle Shanahan, you can put the blame on Matt Ryan, you can put the blame on Dan Quinn, but most of the blame has to go on the head coach because the head coach is the one that makes all the decisions in the plays. So that is strictly mostly Dan Quinn's fault. I probably give Dan Quinn a 7-30 split on him losing that Super Bowl, and that's why he's a defensive guy, but when it comes to the past few seasons he's been coach, what has been our number one problem besides this past season? Defense. Defense. Last year, we went offensive line, and it turned out to be bad for us because two of our rookie guys on offensive line got hurt, and Matt Ryan got sacked for the most times he's ever been sacked as an Atlanta Falcon. But then, 1-7 at the start of the season. 1-7 at the start of the season. I can't believe this when I saw this. 1-7. The first game, we almost get blown out by Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. When I saw that score, I was like, all right, that's 1 week. And then we get to the midseason, I see us 1-7. I'm just like, what's up with this Falcons team? And I see Matt Ryan and Julio Jones top 5 in passing yards and receiving yards. I'm just like, what's going on? Matt Ryan got sacked for the most times, and Matt Ryan was one of the top 10 quarterbacks, probably top 7 quarterbacks in the NFL. You can't place any of the blame on Matt Ryan this past season. He had a shit offensive line, and he still did good. Julio Jones had a shit offensive line, and he still did good. So you can't really put any of the blame on the offense, because the offense was producing even though we had a bad offensive line. We didn't have the worst offensive line, but we still had bad offensive line, and we still managed to come back 7-9. Let's put in this instance. Let's say Matt Ryan and Julio Jones got injured this past season. Would Dan Quinn still be the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons? No, he would not, because Matt Schwab is not good enough. Matt Schwab came in for a game, I remember, and he did play decent, but it was not enough. And Dan Quinn would have been gone if Matt Ryan had gotten injured. I know he did get injured for a single game. But if he had stayed injured, Dan Quinn would not be the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons right now, and we'd probably have a new coach. The reason why I think Dan Quinn is not going to be the Falcons head coach after this upcoming season, whether the season actually starts, is because Arthur Blank is trying to make the Falcons look good for other coaches to come in and just be like, oh wait, hey, I should go coach that team. That team has a plan for the future. That team is built very, very nicely. That team is built to win. Because right now, this Atlanta Falcons team is built to win. We're built to win the Super Bowl. Like, I don't really see, alright, yeah, we needed a cornerback, we needed edge rusher, we needed offensive line, and we did all that in the draft. And then we still got some veteran guys like Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, Jake Matthews, Alex Mack, Caleb McGray, Chris Lindstrom, who just came in. Then on the defensive guys, you got Gray Jarrett, Deion Jones, Keanu O'Neal, DeMonte Casey. And you see all these guys, and I realize the Falcons are built to win right now, but we haven't won in the past 2 seasons. We haven't made the playoffs in the past 2 seasons. And now, this is going to be definitely 100% the season that Dan Quinn needs to take seriously, because now there's going to be one extra slot in the playoffs. There's going to be 7 teams in the... Wait, hold on. Yeah, 7 teams that made the playoffs. 7 teams. If the Atlanta Falcons don't make the playoffs this season, Dan Quinn has to be gone. Because I'll give him, I'll give him some pass for this past season, considering our offensive line is kind of crap, and, Matt Ryan couldn't come back, even though Matt Ryan's usually known for his fourth quarter comebacks. That's why we nicknamed Matty Ice. But if 6 teams were allowed in the playoffs last season in the NFC, and now 7 teams are allowed in the playoffs in the NFC, this has to be an important season, and there's no excuse. If the Falcons do not make the playoffs this year, you can't blame it on Matt Ryan. Especially if this happens. Imagine Matt Ryan, Julio Jones are top 3 in receiving and passing yards. Who we can put the blame on? Todd Gurley. Imagine Todd Gurley's in top 10 in rushing yards. Who we can put the blame on? Our rushing game was a big problem because we had to throw the ball a lot of times with Matt Ryan because Devontae Freeman was basically injured most of the time. But if each of our guys are at least in the top 10 in each category, receiving, rushing, and passing, Dan Quinn is really the problem, and Dan Quinn will be gone after the 2020-2021 NFL season because Arthur Blank is doing the right thing here. Arthur Blank is making the Falcons look like a good team to go coach. And when it comes to the head coaches that could be there, we don't really know because there could be some head coaches that are head coaches right now that could not be head coaches in the future. Imagine the 49ers tank and they fire Kyle Shanahan. I would 100% love Kyle Shanahan to take over the Atlanta Falcons team. He was the leader of one of the best offense the Falcons has ever had in 2016 when we went to the Super Bowl. Yes, he was responsible for the reason why we lost, but he was still a good offensive coordinator. Why do you think the 49ers hired him as a head coach? Because he did so well as an offensive coordinator. And if Dan Quinn were to be fired, Kyle Shanahan's right there. Arthur Blank, he knows Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan knows his team, and I would take Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. Now, the defensive coach now, I'm glad we have a defensive coach because for about a good half of the season last season, we didn't really have a defensive coordinator, but now we do. So that should fix up a lot of problems because Dan Quinn was mostly running the defense, and you wonder why we were 1-7 during the first half of the season. And then Dan Quinn switched up some things, and look what happened. We finished 7-9. We went on the 6-2 run at the end of the season. It's just really, really disappointing to see in terms of me because I'm 100% a Falcons fan. I will always be a Falcons fan. But the one thing I can't just say that Dan Quinn is a very good head coach for the Falcons. He's done good things for the Falcons, and in the times he's been head coach, he's brought us to the Super Bowl, which we haven't been to the Super Bowl since I think 1998 or 97. We did have one of the best offenses in 2016, and he has made this defense a lot better, but some of the moves that he's been deciding to do is just not really, really good. And Thomas Dimitroff also with that. So if Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff need to be gone, if they need to be fired in order for Falcons to move on and get a better coach and a better GM and make some better moves, then I'll definitely 100% take that. And I hope Arthur Blank makes the right decision this season when it comes to those two. Because if we don't have a very good season, I don't even care what anybody says. Both of those guys need to be gone at the end of the season if we don't have a good season. If we have a decent season, they still need to be gone because we cannot have a decent season. This team is built to win. Matt Ryan is around 34, 35 years old. Julio is around 31, 32 years old. This team is built to win right now. And if we don't make the playoffs this year, I'm not taking that. Matt Ryan is probably got at least 2 to 3 more good years. Julio Jones has about 3 to 4 more good years, and then I don't really know that. So we have to be making the playoffs in that time range. So if we don't make the playoffs this year, I don't care what anybody says. Dan Quinn needs to be gone. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Please do smash the like button. But anyway, guys, I will see you guys all later. Peace.